Hello, this is Amy with AC Ashworth & Company, and I'm going to show you today how to digitize a paper pattern. If you've drawn a hand-drawn pattern and you need to get it into CAD in order to grade it or just to have a clean copy, a better copy, this is how you do it. First, you're going to start with a digital photo that you've taken on straight on and import it into your CAD system. I use Cameo version 6. And I have just hand-drawn this pattern very roughly, and it's in JPEG format. I've imported it into my CAD system, and this is how it looks. It's very important to have a square. So what I've drawn here is a 1-inch square in order to scale my pattern, and I'm going to show you how to do that later. This will need to be scaled to the proper size. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw the seam lines. And I'm not going to worry about the seam allowance right now. I'm going to get a more accurate seam allowance later by using the offset function if I just draw the seam lines on here. So the way we're going to start is zoom in really well. First we're going to put a point at each of the corners of your scaling square. So I'm going to use the point function and create a point at each of these corners. Zoom in as much as you can and just create points. And then we're going to measure in between the points either by drawing a line in between them or just by using the measure feature. And I observe the number of inches between those points as it imported, 44 inches. And we know that that needs to be scaled down to 1 inch. Following that, I zoom in as much as possible and put a point at every corner or every joint that I can on this pattern on the seam line. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I work my way around the pattern. I'm going to put a circle here. You want to definitely keep your markings in there. And just continue to put your points all throughout. Everything that you are going to need on this pattern we're going to put in. And then following that, we're going to use the arc function to connect between the points that we've just made and just move those around best we can to get them as close as possible to what the hand-drawn pattern is showing. And so you know your pattern, you know how you want it to look, you know what kind of variation is acceptable. So from here you just kind of do your best to get it exactly the way you want it. And we'll use a combination of arcs and lines. In order to connect to the points, we right-click, at least on this system, we right-click to connect from the first point to the next point. And I want to observe this line, this bottom line here. That needs to be perfectly straight. As you can see, it's not perfectly straight. So I'm going to draw a straight line below it. And later, I will show you how to align the entire pattern to that straight line so that we know that our pattern is drawn on the grain. That will be our grain line. And so we just continue to go throughout, creating arcs and lines until we have this pattern exactly the way we want it. It may take a few iterations, a few trials to get that line exactly where you want it to be. And so I'm just working through here to get it to that point where it's the shape that I want it. And you can always zoom in a little bit more, look at your lines and see where you want them to be. Continuing on. Okay, now we're ready to align our pattern. I want to move this newly drawn pattern off of the JPEG picture, so I've moved that off right now. And then I am going to just delete the picture because I don't need that anymore after I've gone over it and made sure I have all the markings, everything that I need on it. And now we're going to align it. Cameo has an align feature where you can select your pattern, the entire pattern, and then choose the line that you want to align. And we want to align it to the straight line, so I right click on the first line, first point, second point, and then 3 and 4 is the line I want to align it to, and it just moved it down. You saw it just click down there. Now I'm going to delete the line that I was aligning to. That basically straightened out my entire pattern using the align feature. Once again, I observe the line that is my reference line to scale it, and I saw that that was showing 44 inches, but I know I want it to be 1 inch. So I go from 44 to 1 with the entire pattern selected and hit apply, and that shrinks it down considerably to what it was. So I'm going to blow that back up. I am going to label my pattern as a color and the type of color it was. It's been scaled to my customer's measurements. I'm straightening out my label here because it had a little bit of a tilt to it. Just want to check everything over, checking my lines. I'm going to shrink this lettering down just a little bit more. And from here, there's some markings that I'm going to need on my pattern. One of those is going to be the fold line. So I want that fold, place on the fold marking on there. It's best to do this after we've scaled it, otherwise your place on the fold will be too small once it is shrunk back down. So we're going to put that on here now. We've got our nice straight fold line, and from here we're going to use the offset function to add our 5/8 inch seam allowance. And I'm changing my colors back to blue, so that and the size of the lines as well, and just heading on here, getting all those seam allowances marked onto my pattern. And they'll be very accurate because all we traced was just the seam line, the sew line. So putting those cut lines on there. You may want to start with a thicker line when you're tracing your pattern, but I always change that back to a thinner line just for accuracy, and so that's what I'm doing here. Now I'm going to look over my pattern to see if there's anything that needs to be adjusted, and I see some crossing lines here. I'm going to use the intersect function to clean up those crossing, and that's what I'm doing here. I have actually a line down here that's connected to the wrong point, so I'm going to straighten that out. And there we have it. There's our collar pattern from a hand-drawn JPEG picture. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe for more videos on sewing, grading, and pattern drafting. Thanks for watching.